Hello and welcome back to the second part of my top 25 point-and-click adventures from the 90s. If you've missed the first part, you can watch it here. There will be a link in the corner of the video. And with that, I don't even want to waste any more time on this intro, so let's hop right into the top 10. Another game you have most definitely not have heard of is Hilfe for Amajambere. It's another of those ad games that I talked before, just like the Beefy game, but this time it's from the Bundesministerium für wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit und Entwicklung. And as you might have guessed it, it's a German game. And no, it's not available in English, unfortunately, but nevertheless, I really liked that game back then, as it has some great atmosphere. It really brings you close to these locations in Africa, and I especially like the chill little town setting that the game takes place. So not so much high stakes, but a lot of very likable characters and a lot of, well, I would even say culture that you can learn with the game. As you can see from the video, the graphics are quite nice. I especially like the big character portraits that give you a good idea of who you're talking to. The hand-painted backgrounds are also very nice, especially if you consider that this game was completely free. And I also like the upbeat soundtrack that's very memorable and catchy. The puzzles are definitely on the easier side. It's more about talking to the different characters and figuring out what they want from you. But that's also the interesting part, because you really learn about all the problems that the people have and what you can do as a development worker to help.
Yow!
Now this game is a bit different than the one before. Larry 6 and the famous Larry series in general, well, what can I say about that you don't already know? Probably not a lot, but I really love those games. I mean, especially the later ones, because in the first ones you could easily die and I was never a big fan of that, but Larry 6 especially stood out for me because, yeah, it has its amazing location in this spa hotel, it has all the beautiful girls, it has the high resolution graphics, which was a first, and it has actually some pretty decent puzzles and good dialogue, so it's really an enjoyable game overall. It's probably not as good as the seventh game in the series, that's even more beloved as far as I know, but I do prefer the pixel art look a bit over the comic look, and maybe it's just nostalgia that I was a bit younger and that the very rough humor was a bit more my thing back then, before game number 7 was released. The humor is just L love greatness. It hits exactly the right spot between total cringe and still funny, so sometimes you don't want to laugh at a joke, but you just can't help it. It's hilarious. So the game rightfully deserves a spot as number 9 in this top 25.
Good day, miss. My name is Larry.
Hey, kiddies! Let's get happy! It's Fluffy Bun time!
Oh, no! What are you doing on at 4 o'clock in the morning anyway?
From one hilarious game to the next, it's Toonstruck. This game really shines with a more black and twisted humor that was very prevalent in the 90s. It features Christopher Lloyd as a digitized actor in an otherwise cartoony world. And what's really fun about that is how much they make of this setting. So they're really driving home that all this cute and funny stuff and adorable Disney-esque characters are really annoying, and he really wants to get rid of it. And well, he's actually kind of sick of this world, but still forced to help them, or well, let's say he has been talked into helping. It's very creative and has a colorful world that you just love to explore because you never know what you will find around the corner. The puzzles are also quite fine, especially in the first 2 parts of the game. Later on you get in the villain's castle, and I feel from there it goes a bit downhill with creativity and the puzzles as general, but that's not a big downside. Otherwise you really have this beautiful graphics and a very funny and alive backgrounds and characters that just have a ton of personality, and you add the very quirky and almost cartoony performance of Christopher Lloyd himself, and you get a really well-made game that has deserved a spot on this list. Now we are entering absolute classic territory. Day of the Tentacle might be on the top 1 spot for many of you watching, and it might have been my number 1 spot as well, if it has not been for me replaying the game, I think 2 years ago and about 6 years ago. Because, as funny as this sounds, the game has not grown on me, but a bit of the opposite. Don't get me wrong, I still love this game to death, but it somehow felt a bit more tedious when I replayed it. I'm not sure what it was, but with switching the characters, doing the stuff, I felt that the puzzles were really on the forefront, and I was not so much immersed in a world and in a story as in other games maybe. So I guess that if you replay a game where you kind of still know the puzzles to a certain extent and you're not so much interested in that part, then it changes your perspective that you have on the game. It's still incredibly funny and very clever, but yeah, as I said, the locations are just not that interesting. You only have that house in the 3 time zones, which is totally fine for the game, but it makes me less want to replay it for that reason. Okay, what else can I say? I mean, just look at the graphics, they are awesome. It has this very unique style that you don't see in any other game. And I think that's actually a great thing. I think it wouldn't have worked if others tried to replicate the style too much. So that's really amazing. And yeah, the music is great. As I said, the writing is great. The voiceover is great. If you have not played it once, you definitely should. If you have played it already several times, then maybe you understand why I'm not putting it higher on my list here. Is that a fair assessment? Well, leave your comment in the comments. I'm not 100% sure myself, but that's how I see it. And as a side note, I have to mention the amazing fan sequel to the game, Return of the Tentacle. It's very short, it's more just a demo, but it's great. It really has the same production values and the same character, and it's free, so you should definitely check that out. So, if you still not quit this video in outrage, then I might ask you for subscribing to the channel, and you're going to get nice new retro videos in the future. And if you hit the notification bell as well, you will be notified if there are any new ones out.
This better not take too long. I've got an anatomy final tomorrow.
Freunde? Wir waren nur 3-mal zusammen weg und schon erzählst du mir, wir sollen nur Freunde sein?
Sorry for the German opening, but I just love that voice acting. That's actually a thing about the LucasArts game. They always had great translation as well in German, so that's a plus point. But now let's talk about the game Sam & Max. Based on a cartoon that I had never heard of, this is probably the funniest game on the list to me. Not so much laughing out loud funny, but just this twisted dark undertone and the bizarre but very creative characters, twists and dialogue. And the story doesn't really make any sense, but that's not really important because you just want to see where the ride goes. Yeah, it's almost kind of a road trip. You go from location to location through the USA, you find all these weird places, you do all this weird stuff, but it follows its own logic, so the puzzles are mostly very well designed, and I would say the game is actually on the easier side. But nonetheless, it's really rewarding to solve them, and it's so much fun just to go around with those two very politically incorrect characters and try to save the day by destroying everything and putting everyone in danger. The art is also amazing, it's very creative, it has its own distinct look, memorable locations, and I just love the soundtrack. It's very groovy, very jazzy, and it just fits great with this pseudo-detective theme that the game has. Yeah, I just love it. I can also recommend highly the Telltale 7 Max games, but there are a few hit and misses depending on which episode you play. There are a few of the greatest 7 Max experience you can get, but also some of the lesser ones, but Hit the Road is really a very even experience from start to finish. Put down the pitchforks, I know, Eco Quest above King's Quest, Police Quest, Space Quest, but hear me out why I just love this game. The majority of the game takes place underwater, and I was a huge fan of underwater areas, aquariums, fish and so on in my youth, so this is already a big plus in my book, and how wonderful those underwater worlds looked. It just spiked my imagination like no other game, and I always wished that there was this magical kingdom underwater where you can just breathe and explore. And even if some people might be put off by the saving the planet vibes of the game, I really liked that back then, and I think it's still a very valid message, and I didn't mind picking up trash because you had this visual progression that you really made a difference and made the environment more beautiful. Yes, the game is more tailored towards children, but it's really a nice adventure in the truest meaning of the word. You actually go on an adventure, you explore, you learn, you overcome obstacles, and you meet friends along the way. If I had kids, this would probably be the first game I would want to play with them, but I don't, so I just play it again on my own. Oh, and you're welcome for the earworm. That theme is not going to leave your head probably for the next few weeks. There had also been a sequel in the Rainforest which had better production values and is also a very nice game. The setting didn't vibe as much with me, but it's still a great game and one that I actually want to replay very soon. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the best Indiana Jones movie that never was. But it's easy to imagine that this could have been a movie because the story is really great, the characters, the pacing, the set pieces, everything here is top notch. It looks beautiful, it has the iconic Indiana Jones soundtrack, and also if you're playing the talkie version you get really good voiceovers. And especially interesting to me was that there are different ways to play the game. You got 3 different paths that you can choose one from, and the game plays really differently. More action orientated or more puzzle orientated, or you got the team mode where it's more about the 2 characters that you play, Indy and Sophia, which both have their own puzzles and abilities that will help you progress through the story. The puzzles can be a bit tricky, especially in the puzzle mode, but they always make sense and never get too frustrating. It has this great adventure vibe like the movies and a very good sense of humor that's a bit tongue-in-cheek when you're fighting the evil Nazi guys that again want to rule the world with some supernatural artifacts. So why didn't I put this even higher on the list? It's mostly because of the ending at Atlantis itself. I didn't really enjoy that part too much because, navigation is a bit complicated and the puzzles seem to be a bit more tedious than in the rest of the game, and you really spend a long time in the same location. It's fine, it's okay, but in my opinion, it could be even better. I still would love to see an actual sequel of this game, but we will get a third-person action Indiana Jones games, I think from the makers of Wolfenstein, so I'm curious how that will turn out. Now we're getting into territory where it's really hard for me to criticize the game. I think I just love everything about Broken Sword. And the second game was also awesome, which made it really hard to even decide which of the two games I should put here. I went with the first one because I got a bit more memories about that, and I think that the locations are a bit more memorable, and it's just the classic story of Broken Sword with the clown and the explosion in the cafe. It's just a bit more iconic. The production value for these games really go through the roof. There are so many animations, so many little details. It's really the best pixel art, almost interactive movie you can play in my opinion. And it also tells a great story with a lot of mysteries and maybe a few cliches on the way. But this has been before the Dan Brown books, so it felt really fresh and interesting to have such a conspiracy theory and all the interesting historical connections. And taking place all over Europe and especially in France, it's a bit like a virtual sightseeing trip as well. Having played the English dubbed version for the first time while recording this video, I felt that maybe that could be the reason why it hasn't been more famous in the US, because I feel that the voices in the German version are actually quite a lot better. Especially Nico, who was voiced by Franziska Pregula, the German voice for Gillian Anderson, which really gave Nico a lot of character with this calm, low, sexy sounding voice that really made the character come to life. But maybe I'm just used to that voice and it's just irritating if you switch and it conflicts with the memories you have.
As I picked up the plastic ball, I realized it was intended to be worn.
Another surprise? Monkey Island not on the top spot? Yes, I mean at this point the games are so close together that it's almost a coin toss, but I feel that the number one spot is still a bit more important to me. What can I say about Monkey Island? First of all, it's not just a game, it's a series of games, and it was really hard for me to even decide which game to put here. I just recently replayed the first 3 games in anticipation of the new Monkey Island game, and that actually makes things even more complicated, because in my head I thought, well, Monkey Island 1 is a bit of an old game, and Monkey Island 2 is mostly regarded as the big centerpiece of the trilogy. But now I've ended up with Curse of Monkey Island, the third game, and The Secret of Monkey Island would actually be my second pick. I think the reason for that is that LeChuck's Revenge is probably the most serious of the 3 games. Not that it's really serious, but it's a bit darker, it's a bit more menacing, and well, Guybrush wears a beard, so he's gotten old, and I think I personally just prefer my Monkey Island games a bit more lighthearted. I remember when Curse was released that I was a bit hesitant about the new art style. Now I just love it and appreciate every detail. To me it feels like the quintessence adventure game. It has everything you want in there, and it's just what most people think about when they hear the term point and click adventure. If there would be any actual downsides to Curse of Monkey Island, I have to say it would be the ending. That's just a bit short, feels a bit rushed, but that's really just nitpicking here. Now Simon the Sorcerer is nothing like a hidden gem or anything like that, but I feel that especially the second part is still quite underrated. At the time reviewers were a bit skeptical that it took too much inspiration from Monkey Island, but I feel that the game can really stand on its own 2 feet. The fantasy fairy tale world is really very imaginative. And the humor is definitely not the same as in Monkey Island. It's a bit more lowbrow, you could say, and yes, there are some jokes that have aged like milk, but still there are so many creative ideas in there that I recommend everyone who's interested in point and click adventures to play it. The puzzles are actually quite witty, and the graphics has its very own unique style. All the characters look very three-dimensional because they shift their poses quite often, and they look all strange and a bit hideous, but also very cool and unique. Music and voiceover is top-notch, and the world offers many memorable locations that have burned into my mind. I guess one of the reasons why not more people have played this is that it's a sequel and the first game is not that great. It's still completely playable, but it's a bit all over the place, especially with the puzzle design in my opinion. So I definitely recommend playing the second game, and you don't really need to know much about the first game to enjoy this one. The company behind the game AdventureSoft is still around, and you can actually order the game as a full box version for only £9 on their homepage. So that has been my very subjective top 25 point and click adventure from the 90s list. That's a mouthful. And now I wanted to finish the video with a few honorable mentions of adventure games that are not from the 90s, but I still wanted to mention. First, I just quickly wanted to tell you about my own adventure game that I made. Curse of the Old God is available completely for free on Steam. It's sitting at mostly positive reviews, and it's a detective game with a Lovecraftian story. So if you're into that kind of stuff, go check it out. I would love to hear if you enjoy it. Thimbleweed Park. Great game, great story, great graphics, and very funny with this bizarre Twin Peaks vibe. I guess you've already played this, and if you haven't, you should definitely give it a try.
My name is Susan Ashworth. I live alone in this old 2-bedroom flat. I rarely go outside. Some would say it's a lonely life, and I guess that's true, but I don't like people's company. Not lately, anyway.
And last but not least, I wanted to add the Cat Lady. It's an amazing game that really touched me. It's a bit creepy, mysterious, and yeah, really sad, but it's a game that really makes you think. And I don't mean the puzzle so much as the message of the game. If you haven't checked it out yet, I think Halloween would be the perfect timing, and I don't think you will regret it. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. See ya!